everyone, welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Patreon-sponsored review time again, and it's a sequel to another Patreon-sponsored review from 2 years ago. Let's once again enter the world of the Dresden Files. Last time on 2 years ago, in Volume 1 of Stormfront, we met Harry Dresden, a wizard doing modern noir stuff alongside magic. He's brought in by a cop friend of his on an unusual murder, where two people's hearts had exploded out of their chests while in the middle of sex. And that, kids, is why you wear condoms. He suspects someone used a form of sympathetic magic, taking some of their hair or the like and making the body's own energy destroy them from the inside out. The woman was a prostitute in the service of a vampire, while the guy was a mafia bodyguard, which leads Harry to be picked up by said mobster, wanting him to drop the case so he can handle it in his own way. Harry refuses and instead meets up with his other case, a woman named Monica looking for her missing husband, Victor, who has started to get into magic. Things are further complicated by Morgan, an enforcer for the White Council of Important Magic People, who thinks that Harry killed those two. He also learns about a new drug hitting the streets, 3-Eye, that apparently gives people who use it sight into the spirit world. After Monica all of a sudden tells him to drop his investigation she hired him for, someone attempts to assassinate Harry by summoning some kind of frog demon that attacks him and the reporter woman who I haven't mentioned until now that wanted to go on a date with him. But he manages to stop it by channeling some lightning into his body and frying it. So let's dig into the Dresden Files, Stormfront Volume 2, Maelstrom, and see how many other titles we can shove into its name.
Welcome to Atop the Fourth Wall, where bad comics burn. Linkara's gonna teach you all a lesson you won't learn. What's with these awkward subjects? What's all this art so rubbish? To anyone who's had a bad comic published, it could be your turn. Linkara, he is a man who punch sporadically or grouch. Linkara, he has his own spaceship, but he's always on his couch. Linkara, ghosts, gods, a universe in flux. Linkara, this comic sucks. Linkara.
Reading from a trade and no looking at the cover. We open where we left off last time, a naked Harry Dresden in the rain having just killed a demon. College fraternity rituals are getting a lot more elaborate. Morgan appears to berate Harry, thinking that he's the one who summoned the frog demon. I didn't summon that thing, but I damn well sent it back where it belongs. Back to its banjo in the swamp! No rich and famous contract for that thing! Morgan thinks that Harry summoned the demon to try to kill him for his investigation, since, as I said, he thinks Harry killed those two people. But even that seems like a stretch for this dude. After all, if, as Lazy Eye here believes, Harry is capable of exploding people from the inside out, all he would have had to do was to get some of his hair during the earlier scuffle they had and pull the same trick. Still, Morgan says that he summoned the council and they'll be there in 2 days, where he'll make his case that Harry is responsible and should be executed for breaking the rules. I don't usually enjoy my position as executioner, Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden, but in your case, I'll be proud to fulfill that role. I get paid by how many letters are in your full name. It's a weird system, I know, but it's really nice when it comes to guys like you. He teleports away and the cops soon arrive, not summoned by all the demons and lightning, but rather sent by Harry's police detective friend Murphy to come and get him. There's been another murder. Linda, an escort that Harry had talked to last time who was supposed to meet with him the same night he was going to go on a date with the reporter. Linda Randall's apartment looked like the trailer of a rock band that did little besides play concerts, host parties, and fall into a stupor afterwards. Unfortunately, they tended to do all three things at the same time, which made for an awkward concert experience. The kitchenette looked largely unused. My own kitchen looked the same a lot of the time. Although in my case, I blame the 24-hour Taco Bell that opened across the street from my apartment. Here had lived someone else who knew that the only thing waiting at home was a sense of loneliness. Now that's being unfair, Harry. What about Bob the Skull from last time?
Sometimes I even threaten myself just for the attention.
Her death is hitting Harry hard, since she had seemed so vibrant and alive when he had talked to her. Murphy reveals that she had called the cops and knew who it was who had murdered the other two, and that they were coming for her. And Murphy sent for Harry because she had one of his business cards on her. All Harry says is that she would have claimed to know nothing if she had been asked about the murders yesterday. Murphy knows that he's holding out on her, but he wants to protect her given what just happened with the demon. It was way too easy to imagine the walls of Murphy's office splattered with her life's blood. She'd already used it once to decorate her dining room. It was weird. Since they have nothing to actually hold him on, Murphy says they'll be talking again soon and threatens him if he's responsible for all this. At a nearby gas station where he waits for a cab, Harry laments that he's lost Murphy's trust, when he's suddenly attacked by a guy out of nowhere who manages to cut off some of his hair. Knowing that his hair could be used for any kind of magic, Harry tackles the guy to try to retrieve it. But some bystanders pull Harry away and allow the guy to escape. Recognizing that the guy was one of the mafia boss's goons, he figures said boss, Marcone, was trying to be more active in discouraging him dropping the case. As such, he uses some magic, thanks to having some of the goon's blood in his hand, to initiate a tracking spell. The cab that he called for brings him to a nightclub where Marcone is. I considered all the devious means by which I might tilt the situation in my favor. Clever illusions, convenient faltering of electricity or water, a sudden invasion of vermin, but I didn't have time for subtlety. Hey Marcone, they put ketchup on your filet mignon! Yeah, he just bursts in waving his magic stick and breaking stuff. Little pig, let me in! But you're already in. Harry demands his hair back, and Marcone has no idea what he's talking about. Our hero points out one of his guards, who also has his eyes going in different directions. What the hell? Jumped him and took his hair, pointing out an injury on his arm from the scuffle. The guard tries to deny it, but Marcone isn't buying it, especially as Harry has put the pieces together. Clearly, whoever killed Marcone's previous bodyguard was working for a rival of his selling the three-eye drug. The guy tries to shoot Harry, but another guard puts him down, much to Marcone's irritation. I wanted him alive. He could have answered some questions first. Also, his brains are now all over the carpet. I own this club, you know. I have to pay to get that cleaned. Marcone says Harry can have what the guy took, but he can't find it on his body, meaning he must have passed it on to their mutual enemy before he came to the club. Marcone wants to help, but the way Harry stormed into the club has set him up publicly as his enemy. He can't risk showing weakness by assisting him more. He says that if Dresden is successful in finding their opponent, Harry will be viewed as having acted on Marcone's behalf. If he fails, then said opponent will likely reveal himself by killing him. So win-win, Harry! As we enter into the next issue, Harry reflects on his dad, a traditional stage magician who spent most of his time traveling to support his wife and son. He died in his sleep one night, with a smile on his face. Maybe he'd been dreaming of Mother when he went. You don't want to know what he was really dreaming about. Turns out your dad was into some weird stuff, Harry. Now, I'm not going to say that it involves clowns and proctologists, but I can't say they didn't contribute. He returns to Linda's apartment, despondent and thinking that it's likely the next time there's a storm that the killer would take him out. Recall that the murderer used storms to enhance his magic powers. He uses his magic to enter the place. I could smell Linda's perfume and her blood. Both smelled like pineapple for some reason. Exhausted, he fell asleep on the floor, but then as morning came to wake him up, he spotted a film canister under the bed. He had found one before during his investigation into Monica's husband, meaning he suddenly had a link between both cases. And what a coinky-dink! The photographer who left the empty film can breaks into the apartment too, looking for said film can. Catching him, the guy admits to being a photographer, and he knows about magic, realizing that Dresden is a wizard. Harry says that he's just after Linda's murderer, but the guy is terrified that he'll be next if he talks. He eventually convinces the guy to give up some info, that he was hired by Linda to take photos of people at a lake house in compromising positions. Harry decides to take a leap in logic, his admission, not just mine, that Linda was planning to blackmail Victor. As such, he decides to go pay a visit to Monica. The street was a quiet one, and it took me a minute to notice most of the houses on it were unoccupied. I could hear no birdsong, no dogs barking. Overhead, clouds were gathering for another storm. Taken together, it had the feel of someplace blighted, a place where a black wizard had set up shop, or a place where really predatory housing companies have set up. Monica at first refuses to talk with him, but Harry's patience is at an end, and he forces his way inside. She pulls out a taser on him, but using that ability he had in the first volume, where he could gaze into their soul and learn some overall details about them, gets her to stop. Monica's motivation in all this is protecting her two children, who she thinks are in danger, especially after Harry informs her that Linda is dead. Her kids even ask if everything's alright. The girl looked at me for just a moment. Her eyes were too old and too knowing for a child of her age. She's a witch! Fireball! Monica finally spills the beans. She was the older sister of the escort who was originally murdered that started all this. Victor is the true murderer, and he was once a good man, but years ago he started getting into magic. He became corrupted by it over time, even forcing Monica to drink 3-Eye once to get her to see the same things he was and to test its addictive power. His anger made him more powerful, and he began working with one of Marcone's rivals, the Becketts, to sell the 3-Eye and amass power, utilizing other emotions like lust to fuel his magic abilities. He took advantage of Monica's sister to gain more followers in his magic circle, but he was obsessed with getting more and more power, and apparently had designs on their children. The sister threatened him to protect Monica and her kids, but instead he killed her. Monica had hoped Harry could do something to stop him, but with Linda dead, she thinks he'll be killed soon too. He leaves, though her daughter says that she had seen him in the Arcane and hopes that he's a good guy, because they could use a good guy right now. Of course, kid, trust him! He's got that awesome coat! Harry reasons that while Victor is powerful, his magic isn't sophisticated or complicated, so he can use it to track him down. He recalls that Monica gave him some kind of scorpion talisman that he could use. Still, if he was going to die, he wanted to make sure the cops could still get on the trail of Victor. He tries to call Murphy to let her know what's up, but he's informed that she's on her way to Harry's office with a warrant to investigate the place. He calls up the office to talk to her, afraid that she might start grabbing things like the talisman as evidence. He tries to tell her that he knows who the killer is, but she's still so pissed at him that she ignores his warning about his desk. And soon Harry returns to the office to discover Murphy barely conscious, poisoned by the scorpion talisman. As he tries to call an ambulance, she handcuffs him to her in her delirium. That's when the scorpion exploded from the shadows beneath my desk. This is what happens when you don't regularly call an exterminator, Harry. You let the problem grow too big, and it's gonna cost you now. He tosses a drawer at the thing to keep it back. Murphy's still delirious from the poison. He doesn't have enough time to properly prepare for battle or magically escape from the handcuffs, so he drags her to the elevator to try to escape. What the hell was that thing? It wasn't just an insect, it was too damn fast, too damn smart for that. Also, too 8-legged. Scorpions are arachnids, Harry, not insects. It's important to know that right now. He figures the talisman was some kind of power construct, designed to absorb energy and get bigger and stronger. Victor probably figured out what happened to the thing and sent a booby trap to it so that it'd attack anyone who came in contact with it. It's gonna keep growing, and it starts clawing at the elevator car to try to get to them. Shooting a magic firestorm at the thing would just rain slag down on him and Murphy, so he figures out a different plan. Insect or arachnid, it's still a bug, and what do you do with bugs? Smash them. So he uses his magic to force the elevator car up to the ceiling of the shaft, smashing the scorpion in the process. The elevator then begins dropping, and he uses a magic protection bracelet to keep the two alive when it crashes. The EMTs have already arrived, but while Murphy can be saved, he was still in trouble, especially since he no longer had the talisman. He also needs to get the handcuffs off. Both of us were covered with the stinking, colorless goo of ectoplasm that magic called from somewhere whenever generic mass was needed for a spell.
Why are my drippings with goo?
He uses the ectoplasm to slip Murphy's hand off the cuffs. He regrets his decision to withhold information from her, which got her into this. In turn, he doesn't want to leave her behind again, but of course, he's out of options. He somehow reasons that Victor is back at his lake house and needs a car to get there, quickly heading to a bar where magic users hang out. They were the have-nots of the magical community. Dabblers, herbalists, holistic healers, kitchen witches, mystical vending machine restockers. They can all sense the danger Harry brings with him from Victor and are just hoping to avoid it. And indeed, Harry doesn't want to bring them trouble. None are powerful enough to take on Victor. Instead, he just asks to borrow the bartender's car. However, it seems Morgan is waiting for him too. Harry Dresden, I finally figured it out. Using storms to kill people is insanely dangerous, but you are just the sort of ambitious fool who would do it. Do you know how much collateral damage there is with using storms? My God, we'll have to call roofers for the entire neighborhood. He wants Harry to stay put until the council arrives. Harry tries to tell him that he's after the real killer and he's as good as dead if he doesn't leave, but Morgan's not having it. Harry manages to knock him out and leaves, knowing that attacking a representative of the council on official business would mean his death. He reaches the lake house just ahead of the storm, opening his third eye to try to detect any magical traps or barriers. And what they revealed was beyond disturbing. Oh my God, he's been mystically teleporting his poop into the spirit realm for years! Why? The house itself was a place of power, dark emotions, Greed, lust, hatred hung over it as visible things. Skulls were everywhere.
Are we the baddies?
Symbols of the death, quite possibly mine, that lay in the house's future. Yeah, but since it can be any time in the future, it's actually of a death in like 80 years where someone slips on the front walk because they never salted it during winter. He can feel how much power is surging through the place, tempting him with it to destroy not only Victor, but the Council and Morgan too. However, a ghostly hand lifts his own to a silver pentacle, an heirloom belonging to his mother, that brings him back to his senses. I was not a murderer. I was not like Victor's cells. I was a wizard. I am a wizard! Huh. Expecting like a magic wand or something, but hey, you guys ever play Descent? And wizards control their power. They use it to discover, to protect, to mend, and apparently kill people who step out of line, given the Council's MO. He finally enters. Things clung everywhere. All of them were unpleasant, hostile, and shied away from me. Oh yeah, this place definitely has black mold. As he moves through the house, he finds vials of 3i and chemical components for mass producing a lot of it. Hearing Victor chanting a spell, Harry quickly goes on the attack to lead us into the final part of the story. While the Becketts, that rival mafia gang I talked about, have sex in a corner, Victor is finishing up the spell to try to kill our hero. That rabbit was a ceremonial representation of me.
Well, that's no ordinary rabbit.
If he managed to gouge out its heart, the same would happen to me. If he fed it some rabbit food, I would also be eating it. Somehow Harry is able to break Victor's magic circle by tossing the empty film canister he had found before at it. He says it's because it was hurled by a mortal. I'm sure the books explain that better, but any explanation of that seems absent here. But unfortunately, doing so unleashes all the power that was in it. Both can now tap into that power, though it's running wild and setting the place on fire. Victor tries to use magic on Harry, but as he points out, wizards sometimes get so caught up in magic that they forget other options exist. So he just tackles Victor and starts wailing on him. Personally, I'd use a gun. As James Stephanie Sterling once put it,
and it's only got one spell. Bang!
Unfortunately, Beckett has the same idea, trying to shoot at Harry and forcing him to back off. He uses a spell to jam the guy's gun, but Victor recovers and starts summoning scorpions. However, a broom falls on Harry's head and he decides to be fun about this, using a cleaning spell on the broom that literally has it sweeping the scorpions off the second-story balcony. Still, he's not in great shape, having taken a bullet to the leg and Victor now taunting him. Harry bluffs him, saying he's already told the police, the council, and Marcone about him, so he's pretty much done. He figures he's done for anyway and wants Victor in the house as it burns down. However, Victor decides not to stick around, telling the Becketts to go get the car ready while he summons up the frog demon from before. As Harry points out, you can't really kill a demon. I mean, where are they gonna go after all? But Victor made a mistake. By summoning the demon like that, he revealed the demon's name. Harry is able to use his own magic to free the demon from his control. Unfortunately, that means it'll go after both of them. Victor tries to get him to banish it like before, but Harry figures this means they'll both go down together. Quite literally in this case, as they both fall over the second-story railing. Victor starts preparing a spell to defend himself and hopefully get away, but Harry distracts him by revealing that it was his wife who ratted on him. And this allows the frog demon to chomp down on him. That's not even the worst part of Victor's day. He only had one payment left on this cabin. Victor's a spiteful sort, trying to get Harry to drop down into the scorpions and fire even while he's being eaten. However, Harry suddenly remembers Murphy's handcuffs still on his arm, attaching himself to the railing to keep from falling. Victor and the demon fall into the scorpions, who will apparently attack anyone down there, bit of a design flaw, Victor, but Harry is too exhausted to try to escape. However, rescue comes in the form of Morgan, who's able to get him outside and give him CPR. He reveals that he saw Harry risk his life to stop the killer. Doesn't mean you had to save me. You weren't guilty. Technically, I had a duty to preserve your life. It's not as if I even like you, Baka. Morgan also has to report his selflessness to the council, which may mean the sword of Damocles hanging over him will be lifted too. Still, Morgan threatens that they'll keep watching him to someday prove he's dangerous and has to be stopped. But Harry's just happy to be alive. The cops soon arrive and arrest the Becketts for public nudity. The rumor in the mafia is that Marcone hired Dresden to take out the 3i gang and therefore got potential mafia gangs off his back. And indeed, the council was impressed with Harry's valor and lifted the doom on him. I don't think Morgan ever forgave me for being a good guy. He had to eat crow in front of his superiors. Okay, you can't use that expression in a book like this. It's possible he'd have to literally eat crows. Murphy recovered and mostly forgave Harry, though obviously their relationship was strained over this. The reporter lady agrees to another date with Harry, and the fairy from last time was even supplied with pizza on a regular basis as thanks for his help. Hey, I remember my debts. And you never know when a fairy's help will come in handy. Unfortunately, the fairy soon grew resentful because that particular Pizza Hut never had pan crust available. And so our comic ends with Harry saying that while he's still potentially a monster because of the temptation to do evil and to use that power, that's just the way things are. When things get strange, when no one else can help you, give me a call. I'm in the book. Unfortunately, Harry's phone never worked because magic disrupts technology. This comic is good, though a bit of a shift from the last volume. That's mainly because of the decision to split the story into 2 volumes. Ending the first part of Stormfront where it did made sense, a big exciting action climax after all the pulpy noir investigation stuff. But the problem is these 4 issues are much more of a fast-paced action piece because we're rushing towards the actual climax of the story. It's one big story split in half, so this second volume feels very different from the first. It doesn't help that we have an artist shift over to Brett Booth, who I'm not really that fond of. His coloring always goes very oversaturated and glowy, with a lot of coloration tending to focus on purples and blues, and that can be dull for the eyes. Still, the action is good, and it wraps up the story pretty nicely, full of character development for Harry, and explaining a lot of his backstory in an organic way without it seeming forced. Victor as a villain is pretty one-dimensional, but this is the initial story of Harry Dresden, so things are naturally going to evolve from there. This is to set up the universe and the stakes, and the comic does a fine job of that. Next time, another Patreon-sponsored review as we venture into a storyline featuring Carol Danvers as Captain Marvel, the Last Avenger. When things get strange, when no one else can help you, give me a call. Sorry, dude, but you're like 3rd in line behind the Ghostbusters and the A-Team.
Hello, my friends. Please take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and click the bell for notifications on new video releases. If you'd like to support future videos, you can check out my Patreon or purchase a t-shirt via Teespring or Shark Robot. Thanks for watching!